chief operating officers or second in command executives pro bono with absolutely no fees or obligations. This initiative aligns with the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, Inc., COO Forum core values, and is expressly intended for any and all chief operating officers and second in command executives. We are on our third month, and we will be continuing with this weekly program. We are also looking to add to this initiative with some new efforts. Just a few guidelines to help everybody with the meeting and the meeting courtesy. First off, mute when not speaking. It's just keeps the noise down, helps everybody out. Business first. It's okay to step away, take care of family business. It's okay to leave early if you have to leave early to get on an important call or whatever. Just business first is our protocol. Business language and no politics just makes sense. The meeting will be recorded and posted on the Mighty Networks for later reference. So you can get in there and take a look if you want to review those. And if you've missed any, you could review some of them as well. They're in there too. We want to keep job prospects confidential. The prospects lead to poaching, so we don't want to have anybody poaching. And we will have a Q&A at the end of the meeting and post your information on chat if that's something that you want to do. I want to introduce the people that are part of this today. First off, Laura Weichel. Laura Weichel is second in command for 13 years as our Executive Vice President at the COO Forum. Based in Greater Atlanta, she is responsible for leading the many and various activities for the Chief Operating Officer Business Forum, COO Forum organization, and leadership overseeing all chapters, chapter directors, and members. She is a wonderful, upbeat, visionary colleague who creates extraordinary outcomes and successes. Fiona Murray is new to our organization and is taking the point on the COO Executives in Transition. Most of you probably have interfaced with her. We are so grateful she's with us and able to continue to broaden our ability to support Chief Operating Officers and Chief Operating Officers in Transition. I'm thrilled to share with you Percy Cannon. Percy will be our thought leader today. Percy has been helping hundreds of corporate executives and their teams boost their leadership and teamwork capabilities over the past 10 years. Before this, Percy spent close to 3 decades working for 3 multinational corporations, Procter & Gamble, IBM, and Microsoft in the United States and across several countries in Latin America. Percy is a certified professional coach and an expert in several team development methodologies, such as the ideal team player, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, the go-giver, everything DISC, the 6 types of working genius, and others. Percy lives with his wife of 39 years, Julie, in Delray Beach, Florida, has 3 children and 6 grandchildren. He enjoys running and reading. He also is the COO Forum Chapter Director for the Greater Miami, South Florida area. Percy, welcome. Take it away.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you. Let me share with you the agenda for today. And I'm very honored to be in front of you guys, and also the kind words. Thank you, Bill. I do want to add one data point that that is not included in my bio, and it is that in the close to 3 decades that I was inside the business, the corporate world as an executive, about a midpoint, I lost my job. My job disappeared, and it took me 8 long months to find my next job. And so that was a difficult moment in my life, and at the same time, it was a growth moment, a growth period in my life. So I wanted to also share that with you guys. And also, about 10 years ago, I decided to make a career change, and I looked into I did a little bit of introspection and trying to determine what I really liked to do the most, what I was good at, and where was it that I could really add value to others. And the intersection of those three circles is what gave birth to my second career as a coach, as an executive coach, and as a team consultant. So what we have today is we're going to talk about the ideal team player, and we're first going to get an overview of what this model is all about, and then we will look at two different applications of this methodology or of this model. One for about 10 minutes to you as a professional, as a person, where you stand on this model of ideal team player, and that may give you a few insights into where you could improve when you have in your functions as a team member or as a team leader. But then we will get into which I think is the heart of the discussion of today, which is how this model, how these virtues that you will hear in a moment about the ideal team player can be potentially leveraged in your current search process. And for that, we will have about 20 minutes or so as an open discussion. So with this, let me just pause for a moment and ask if there's any questions about this. Okay. So we're going to see now a video that is going to last about 12 minutes or so. And can anybody raise their hand if you know anything about Pat Lencioni? Okay, I see a few hands up. Okay, so this is anybody by any chance has seen this video? It's a TEDx talk from him. No, good. Okay, so we're going to watch the video, and then we will come back and discuss what you got out of it. Let me suggest that you take notes, because there's a lot of information that is going to be shared in there. So with that, let me.
Okay, so I'm very excited to be here. I'm also a little nervous. Now, I speak for a living, so I shouldn't be nervous, but this is probably one of the talks that there's a good chance my kids are going to see. In fact, my 8th grader said, "You're doing a TEDx talk?" And I said, "Michael, I do a lot of talks." He goes, "Yeah, but this is big, Dad." I'm excited to be here because I think it's time that we change the way we thought about success as a society. In fact, better yet, I think it's time that we change the way we prepare people for success at all levels of life. So I'm going to be presenting you with 3 very simple, but I think powerful virtues that I'm convinced can drastically change the success level in anyone's life, whether they're a CEO or a middle manager, a middle school student, or a high schooler, or a recent college grad. Now, I'm confident of this because I believe, and all of this is based on the premise, that life, more than ever, is a team sport. My name is Pat Lencioni, and I have been working with teams for the past 25 years in the corporate world and in other settings. I've also written 2 books about teamwork. The first one I wrote years ago, it's called The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And then recently I wrote a sequel called The Ideal Team Player, which is the basis of today's talk and where I explore those 3 virtues. Now, when I say that life is a team sport, I realize that could sound kind of like a cheesy cliche, life is a team sport, but I really believe it's true. I mean, we take for granted the fact that in the workforce today, people can be on the same team as somebody that lives on the other side of the world, across continents and oceans and cultures and language. And that's largely because of technology. But when I started my career about 30 years ago, which isn't that long ago in the grand scheme of things, we couldn't even imagine doing this. But today, because of technology, people can work together in so many different ways. And as a result of that technology, people are developing in organizations solutions that are amazing and complex, that are solving problems in business and medicine and communication and every kind of field. And those complex solutions demand that people collaborate and work as teams to implement them. Even within a company, you have to work across divisional or departmental lines, or with people in other companies. Even competitors today are having to work together to implement these important solutions. This really is the era of teamwork in business. But even in our personal lives, teamwork has permeated everything. My wife and I have 4 sons at home, and we like to say that by the time that each of them was in middle school, they had played on more teams with more coaches, in more sports, and gone to more darn tournaments than we did in our entire lives combined. And that's to say nothing of all the other extracurricular activities that happen on teams. Even in the classroom, teamwork is everywhere. I mean, my kids come home, I don't know how many times they've come home with an assignment and said those 4 dreaded words. It's a group project. And I ask them that dreaded 4-word question, who's on your team? I'm not ashamed to say that more than once I've said to my sons, if you want to get a good grade, you might have to be prepared to do most of the work yourself. Teamwork is everywhere. And yet, we continue to train people in education and in the workforce for primarily individual and technical skills. And I think that needs to change. And that's why I'm going to present to you these 3 simple virtues. All right. Okay, that's the end of my memorized part of my speech, which freaked me out because I don't memorize anything. Now let's just talk. All right, so we're going to go to the first slide. In my book, The Ideal Team Player, I explore these 3 simple virtues, but the power of those virtues is in the commonality of them all. We have to have all 3. If you play baseball and you're 1 for 3 hitter, that's pretty good. It's terrible in teamwork. If you're 2 for 3 as a quarterback in passing, that's pretty good. You gotta be 3 for 3 when it comes to teamwork. So let's talk about these 3 virtues. Let me introduce you to them and then talk about how we can identify and improve ourselves if we're lacking any. So the first virtue of an ideal team player is by far the most important, and it is humility. If you want to be an ideal team player, and if you want to be successful in life, you really need to be humble, more than ever. Now this is the most important because as a follower of Jesus, the Bible says that the root of all sin is pride. And I believe that. You look at all the problems we have, it's usually rooted in pride. Well, the antidote to pride is humility, so it stands to reason that this would be the most important. And most of us know what humility is, right? It's not being ego-centered or arrogant or self-centered, but being about others, putting others ahead of ourselves. It's such an attractive and powerful thing. But there's another side of humility we have to understand too. It's in the minority, but it's still important to understand. See, some people will look at another person and say, she never talks about herself. She never demands that we listen to her. She never thinks she has the right answer. She's really humble. And when somebody lacks confidence, it's actually not humility. You see, when we have an idea or a talent, to deny our God-given talents is actually a violation of humility, just like it is to exaggerate them. C.S. Lewis said it best. He said, humility isn't thinking less of ourselves, it's thinking about ourselves less. But the most prominent kind of lack of humility we see in teams, in the workforce, and in life is arrogance and ego-centeredness. So this is the first and most important attribute. The second one is equally simple, and it is you have to be hungry. You have to be hungry. People who have an innate hunger about getting work done are much more successful on teams and in life. And this is simply just having a strong work ethic. And this is probably the easiest one to understand, but I'll say this to the young people out there. This is the one that you probably have to develop earliest in life. When I work with people later in life who never developed an innate sense of hunger, it's harder. And so I talk to kids in middle school and I say, do it now. Work hard at everything you do. This is not about workaholism, though. Workaholics are people who get their entire identity from their work, and that's not what I'm saying here. People who are hungry just want to go above and beyond, have a high standard for what they do, and never do the minimum. They never do just the minimum. Now, the third attribute of an ideal team player is what I call being smart. But it's not about intellectual smarts. This is about emotional intelligence, common sense around how we understand people and how we use our words and actions to bring out the best possible impact in others. This is so important in the world. And you can develop this in life. Being smart is one of those things that people can work on and get better at. So humble, hungry, smart. These are the three simple virtues. But the key is that we have to have all three to be an ideal team player. So it's really important that we learn how to identify in ourselves and others when one is lacking. So what I'm going to do now is come up with some labels, which I want you to use carefully, for people that lack one of these in a very serious, egregious way. So let's take a look at those now. A person who is humble, the most important one, they think about others ahead of themselves, and they're hungry, they work really hard, but they lack smarts. They're not emotionally intelligent. We call this the accidental mess maker. Now, I have a lot of time for accidental mess makers. They're good people, they have really good intentions, but they kind of create problems that they're not aware of. They're like that dog, that puppy. I have a puppy at home, and they knock things over a lot, but they mean well, and they poop on the carpet, and you have to clean up after them. But because they mean well, you can whack them on the nose with a newspaper, and they come back for more. They have a great attitude. The problem with accidental mess makers is just you do have to clean up with them. They create a little bit extra work. And over time, you kind of get tired of having to say, he's a really good guy. He didn't mean it that way. Nonetheless, of the three types that lack one of these virtues, I will take the accidental mess maker. The second one is also a very good kind. That's somebody who's humble, the most important one. And they're smart. They're good at dealing with people. But they lack hunger. We call this kind the lovable slacker. Now, lovable slackers, the problem is they're lovable. So they're really fun to be around. And they're good people. They're nice people. But they just do the bare minimum. They don't go above and beyond, and you have to constantly remind them to do more. And you have to kind of pick up their slack in an organization. Now, I once worked with a lovable slacker. A good friend of mine still is. And every time I reminded him that he needed to do more, he would say, "You're right." And he was so passionate in life about everything besides work. Right? But because he was lovable, he was so fun to be with. And I said to him one day, I said, "You know, you're going to have to leave this company when you're good and ready." And 5 years later, he was out that door. The truth is, it's very easy to tolerate lovable slackers, but they do have a problem. They cause problems on a team. Now, the third type is the most difficult type. This is the person who is hungry. They really want to work hard. They're ambitious. And they're smart. So they're really good at dealing with people. But they're not humble. And we call this the skillful politician. I'm sure your mayor here is not the skillful in this sense. No, she's probably a skillful leader, but not the skillful politician in this sense. Skillful politicians are so smart that they know how to portray themselves as being humble, which is a very dangerous thing. Because what they do is they interview well, they go to meetings and they say the right things, they know how to kiss up to the boss or the coach or the teacher. The problem is, deep down inside, it's about them, not about others. And by the time we figure it out, there's usually a trail of dead bodies hidden in closets around the organization. I once worked with this guy on the team that was a skillful politician, and he was so clever at hiding it. He was so clever that he was even Canadian. You see, you would never suspect a Canadian. They're always so nice. You would never think they would be that way. And we would go to meetings, and this guy would be so good with people, and we thought, he is the ultimate team player. He's wonderful. And then after a while, we realized, man, his salary has tripled. Half of his colleagues are gone. He's been gaming this. The truth of the matter is, when a person lacks humility, but they're good at presenting themselves, that can be a very dangerous thing on a team. Okay, so what do you do with this? First of all, I don't want you to misuse these labels. Don't go back to work and say to your boss, "Hey, I think that you're an accidental mess maker." Or tell your mom she's a lovable slacker. You know, that's going to get you into trouble, and it should. Apply this first to yourself. But then I want you to do this. Here's a very simple activity. Go sit down with your team at work, or with your family, or with the Little League team you coach, and have everybody understand humble, hungry, and smart. And then ask them to rank themselves in these three areas. Which one they're best at, second best, and third. Even if they're good at all of them, they're going to have a third. Even if they're not so good at all of them, one of them is going to be third. And have them just identify which one is their third. And then go around the table and ask people to explain their third and why that's theirs. And then talk as a team about how people can brainstorm about how people can overcome this. Give each other advice. That humble person, you might say, you know, maybe you shouldn't talk about yourself so much, but you should ask questions of others and take an interest in others' lives. That hungry person, it's like, maybe when you're about to leave work at 4:50, you should check in and see if there's more work that needs to be done. Or that smart person at the end of meetings, maybe you should ask people if you've upset anyone and learn about how you can avoid that. Whatever the case is, what I want you to do is turn your colleagues, your team members, your family members into your coaches. They are the best source of coaching and advice you have to become a better team player and more successful in life. Because the day you know that the people around you love you enough to tell you when you're doing something that you need to improve in, everything changes. So I want you to go home and I want you to do this. And in a very short period of time, you're going to see a difference. Now, let me leave you with this. At my company, the Table Group, we don't care when we hire people where they went to college. We really don't. And we don't care about their GPA or their ACT or their SAT. The only three-letter acronym we care about really is H, H, and S. And I think that's something that we need to do more of in our society, whether it's professional development in our organizations or whether it's in our schools. You know, I think, as a father of 4 boys, I think it's time we took a little bit of the pressure off kids from just memorizing the periodic table of the elements or iambic pentameter, whatever that is, I don't even remember, or the quadratic equation. I mean, we have to learn those things, I get this, and kids should work hard. But I think we should actually give them things that they can control in their lives that are really going to pay off in their future. And we should teach them how to be other-centered, not self-centered. We should teach them how to work hard at everything they do, school and everything else, just because it's the right thing to do. And third, we should teach them how to be more adept interpersonally and emotionally with the people around them. See, I think that could make a huge difference in our corporations and in our schools and our families. And I really believe that the world would be a better place and that our companies would be better places. Our families would be better and the individuals in society would be better if more of us were humble, hungry, and smart. Thank you and God bless.
Can you hear me? Yes, okay, okay. Let me, oops, sorry. Something, okay, sorry. Screen share and here. Okay, so now what I want to do is just spend 10 minutes at most to do a brief debrief, and I want to share a self-assessment tool that is available. I'm actually just going to share the questions that are available, but I like to walk you through that and then get some insights from you after watching this video. So the three virtues: humble, hungry, and I made an addendum here, which is call it people smart, just to make sure that we don't think of this as the intellectual smart, but it's the people smart. And what the assessment tool is about, and I'm just, like I said, it's just for you to get a sense of where you are stronger and or less strong. Each of the virtues has 6 questions, and they just essentially describe what humble means. You compliment or praise others without hesitation, admit your mistakes, and so forth. So what I want to share with you here is if you want to quickly in your notebook, rate yourself in each of the questions, 3 usually or 1 rarely, or just mentally try to think about where you think you're the strongest and where you think you are the least strong, and this will sort of help you get a sense of where you are, in this. And what I would like to ask you guys is if you can start sharing in the chat just which let me see here. Okay, if you can share what your lowest virtue is in the chat, either because you just went through all these, you know, 1, 2, or 3 rating on each one, or just based on what you are seeing here, what you heard, Pat Lancioni, which one do you think is your lowest? And see. So in the chat, okay, I see a humble. Remember, just put your lowest, okay? Anybody else who wants to share? Okay, people smart. There's a second one. Humble, people smart, hungry. Aha. So we have hungry. We have several. We have a pretty well distributed set of opportunities. Probably people smart seems to be the most common one so far. Okay, okay. So I like to hear from you. What anybody here who wants to get here to view? Anybody wants to share? I'm just going to stop this so I can see you guys. Okay. Anybody wants to share any insights that they learned out of this short video from Pat Lancioni?
I'll jump in quick.
Thank you, Josh. Go ahead.
Yeah. So for me, it's more of a confirmation that I'm working on the right things. You know, when I looked at the list that was under SMART, you know, and I look at kind of what I've been reading over the last 18 months or so, it's all related to being relational and active listening and those sort of things. So, you know, it's more of just confirmation that you know, my focus of improving myself is focused appropriately. So yeah, thanks for sharing that today.
Thank you, Josh. Anybody else? Anybody else who may have learned a new insight here, or as Josh mentioned, confirmed that you're sort of on the right path? Yes, Mark.
A couple of observations for me, Percy. One is my initial reaction was, I feel pretty good about all 3 of those areas, which probably means being humble is my weakest. But the second observation is I'd be more interested in others' perceptions of where I stand on those 3 areas than my own perception of that.
Yes, that is if that is one of the potential exercises that sort of are complementary to this. You know, there's actually a few. You know, one of them is as sort of Pat alluded at the very end, to seek the input from others. And so I have done this before, you know, with actual teams, and I have asked them I have sent them to a breakout room, you know, to 3 breakout rooms, each with all of those folks that are, you know, humble, hungry, or smart as their lowest, and then ask them to talk about, you know, why they rated themselves so low in, say, humble, and get the input from the others. And amazingly, and what I do is I just sort of, you know, jump in between breakout rooms. And I love that, you know, that the conversations, because most of them are really about how they have a misperception. They think they have an issue with humble, and they when they hear from the other folks who are team members, you know, they say, well, listen, you know, well, maybe, but I think you are probably, you know, people smart is probably the one thing, because look at this, you know, element, this particular question about it, and I have seen you really not care much about the, you know, the generating empathy with other folks. So yes, Mark, that's one. And by the way, I'm going to build on that, because there's other applications that you can do at, you know, when you reinsert yourself in a place, in a workplace, as a manager, you can use these questions as a way to rate how your, you know, team members are. And also when you interview not when you interview yourself, when you are interviewing somebody, you can also look at this model as if you are looking for people who you want to be good team players. So thank you, Mark. Anybody else?
I could just add, Percy.
Yes.
That,
Sorry. Go ahead, Chris, and then Matthew. Okay.
Bringing this back to our situation for some of us here on the call, that we are in transition and we are going through interview process and putting ourselves in front of potential employers. I think sort of embedded in all of these three virtues is this idea of humanity. We are going through this very unique human crisis. And I think what's interesting for me as I think about these virtues now, as I go to interview and talk to people, there's certainly, I want to be coming in and conveying my sense of humanity and how I can use these virtues in my own leadership skills to help us navigate through this period of crisis. But I'd be curious to see sort of post-COVID, as we kind of get back to this new normal that everyone's sort of talking about, whether these virtues are as kind of relevant as they are now in this time of such disruptive change.
Yeah. By the way, Chris, thank you for your comment. We will, in a couple of minutes, we will really open up the discussion as to how we apply these this model and these three virtues, or how you could apply this in your current search processes. But to answer your question, I think that teams are here to stay. And the humanity of it. Yes, it's probably much more important now that people are working remotely. But if I don't want to say if and when, when we get back to a somewhat or normal or the new normal, whatever you want to call it, by the way, this video was recorded in February, well, there was already some cases, but pre really lockdown. So I think it is as relevant during and post pandemic. Okay, thank you, Chris. Matthew, you had a comment, or you wanted to say something?
I think what I found interesting is my ranking has changed over time, and to some extent, I think reflects maybe some situational factors in terms of the relative importance that I would give to each area. So I think it's changed based on maybe my level of engagement in my last role or some of the challenges in the prior role. So I found that interesting, and I'd also say as I look at the three, I probably have the hardest time with other leaders who are on the opposite end of the spectrum, where their ranking is exactly opposite of where I would rank myself.
Thank you, Matthew. And yes, this is we cannot isolate ourselves from the teams or the co-workers that we have, and really, frankly, of the organizational culture of the company that you're in or that you will be in. It's if it is a company that does not promote teamwork, that it's all about the individual, then you have a choice. You either, if you can live with that, you stay. If you cannot, you try to get something else. And yes, your comment, Matthew, made me think about my own corporate career and how it also changed probably the way I behaved and my sort of profile based on the company culture, really. And also my position. I've had positions where I had like a P&L responsibility. I was a general manager at one point, and so I really reached out to everybody, Whereas when I was maybe a functional leader, I may have not, been such a good, or my profile may have been different. I may have been more on the hungry side rather than maybe humble. But anybody else? So we can jump on to the next section, which I think is the meat of today's session. No?
Yeah, I just want to add one more comment. I was in a table group executive leadership session before. One of the concepts that they emphasize a lot is the team one concept. which is that executives tend to focus a lot in building relationships and engaging their own teams, but then they really overlook the fact that you are in one team with the rest of the executive leaders, and that has a lot of provoking thoughts that's conveyed to the group. Is afterwards the participants tend to spend a lot of time reflecting on how they build this team one together, how they work together. And that's related to what Matt talked about, is that when I was looking at the attributes earlier, people smart and really applying those when it comes to working with other leaders, I think is the hardest part that I find. And in this transition period, and to your point earlier, it is a period of growth for us to have the time to reflect on how we could do better in this area. It is very helpful.
Thank you, Gina. Just for the rest of the folks here, when Gina talked about Team One, is the concept that if you're part of a leadership team, and say you're the functional head of marketing, and the question is, which is your first team or your number one team? Is it marketing, sort of your vertical sort of a team, or is it the horizontal one, the leadership team? And what Pat Lencioni proposes, and with which I fully agree with, and I think Gina, you too, is that your team, your first team, your team number one should be the leadership team, and it is your job not only to do the best marketing, but it's your job really to find this common agenda, this common objective with the rest of the folks, to align everybody there, so that when you deploy, you sort of share your priorities with your folks, and the sales guy and the engineering guy, and whoever, whatever they trickle down, and the priorities that trickle down, they have a common denominator up here. But if you don't, then it's up to the folks down there. It's up to your folks in marketing with the folks down in the next level down in sales and next level down in engineering, who have to figure out a way that they have a common denominator. So that is sort of the predicament behind the team number one. Thank you, Gina. That was a very good comment, and I really believe in that team number one. Okay, so let me now move to the next point, which is the discussion about the open discussion about how we can apply this to your search process. And just as a sort of as to throw some ideas at you guys, more than suggestions themselves, is really more starting sort of concepts that we can build on and or you can add. It's obviously it's the first thing is if there's anything in here that can be applied to your interviews, and one way could be to improve your value proposition in some shape or form. Other idea that I had was if you can engage the interviewer on Teams, and make it a topic of the discussion and understand how they deal with teams. And you may be surprised that maybe the interviewer doesn't really have this as a top of mind thing, or maybe they do. So it's one thing to check into, and obviously if teams are a very important part of the one job that you're interviewing for. And the last thought here was if you can think of one or two anecdotes that you can have in your arsenal, so that if and when the topic comes, or if you volunteer the topic of teamwork, you can share, as another element, another angle of your leadership experience. So with this, is like I said, these are just thought provokers. I want to I'd like to ask now for your guys's thoughts, and this will be the equivalent to the Q&A session, meaning let's not so much a Q&A. If you want to ask questions, I can try to answer them, but it's really more about what do you think you can apply to your current search processes?
I would follow up on
Alexei,
what Gina
yes.
was asking about, is, and the team one is maybe examples of how the leadership team functions. I assume all of us would be joining a leadership team, and what kind of environment are you getting into? So asking for examples of how they run, how do they operate? Are they under an operating system? How do they do that sort of thing? But curious if there's ways of exploring that in a way that's not too aggressive.
Well, I think that you, Josh, yes, you're next. But I think that you can. Well, sorry, Josh, did you have a potential answer to this question?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
So my question that I would go to an interview with, because it's more of a discovery question, right? And I think if you ask it in a canned way that's more generalized, you're going to get a canned answer. But I think asking the question more of, can you step me through how and I would leave it open, the team was involved in getting to this point of my interview. So asking how the team interacted and how the team was involved in getting to the point where I'm an interview candidate. So asking something specific like that is a discovery question, but it also is directed to pull them out of their canned answer, because they can't just say, well, the way our team operates is this happens in this meeting, and it's more of a direct question that pulls them out of their kind of canned listed response. So that's what I would recommend. Ask a direct question that's related to your situation, and that should open up some dialogue into, we included, and leaving it open to like the team so that they define who the team is, because that gives you some insight into how they put value in their team overall. So that's my recommendation.
That's good.
Anybody else has a thought on Alexei question? I was going to add, Alexei, that you pronounce it Alexei?
Alexei.
Okay. That another way is to ask if you are going to be interviewed by any of your potential or future teammates or colleagues, and also ask them the same question. Plus, it also allows you to read. You will be. It's kind of easy to do. Well, not easy, but it's something feasible to get a read on how much of a team player the person who is interviewing you is. Unless they're like, what is it called, the skillful politician. So that's another option, Alex. Okay.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay. Any other potential application?
Yeah. Hey, Percy, this is Brian. I was thinking about Alexei's question. The thing that I like to try to figure out is what the team does to build their teamwork. So I often want to know, are there retreats? Are there days out of the office? Are there, what is the team doing to work on the business, not just in the business? And that can give you some sense of how they value teamwork amongst their team.
Great. Thank you, Brian. I would build on your comment, Brian, which is that it's also to understand if the teamwork is built around, and this goes actually beyond the ideal team player, perhaps, but if it is a canned way of building rapport between team players, between team members, as let's have a day off in the park, or have this retreat where you do some activity that tries to generate trust among the team members. I'm not against those. All I'm saying is that if that's all you hear, that's also a watch out, versus trying to, what's behind this wasn't spelled out, but it's to generate trust, and you generate trust with team members essentially by getting to know them. You got to know them and it's not on a social, one day offsite. It's really more in terms of the day to day, and so that could be another, I guess, question or element in when you ask a question about the team. What about your value? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
I don't know if this is shifting us in a different direction, but I was going to say that I think you could use the idea of being humble to learn a bit more about a company's problems, and then weighing in on how you might solve them, as opposed to pushing your background, your experiences, focusing too much on selling yourself. And I think that starting out by asking about the problems that a company is facing usually is a good way to both express interest and maybe elicit more kind of more candid conversation. And then I would extend that, I think, as part of the broader search process. I think helping others, whether it's connecting people in your network or whether it's helping someone else that's in transition, tends to generate, in my view at least, a fair amount of goodwill that generally maybe shows up down the road or results in other good things. So I think applying that trait of being humble both to the interview process as you meet people and to your network yields good things.
I agree. Thank you, Matt. Any application I want to build on what Matt said. You talked about humble. I wonder, maybe let's just go through the other two, so hungry, and any thoughts about how to potentially either ask questions about it or play that virtue in some shape or form? Alexi, I see you unmuted.
I think as you said, the anecdotes and giving examples, of course. For me, I would put it this way: wearing multiple different hats, being able to get involved in different parts of the business, doing more than what's expected, and weaving a story around that. Oftentimes, trying to understand, if you're trying to understand other team, your potential peers, their levels on there. I think it's as easy as asking some questions about what they do, like what Matt talked about with understanding their problems. And I think you can do a lot to understand what's happening on the team and how what the dynamics are there from his kind of questions.
Yes. And I would build on this, Alexi, in the sense that the hungry has two components. There's people who are hungry, but only for themselves. Yep. And they may be the top salesperson, for 3 years in a row, MVP, etc. But it's all about him or her, and that's good, but that's not enough. I mean, meaning that's good. That's you need to obviously be able to deliver on your own, but you also need to know how to deliver through others, and that could be another way for you guys to either ask questions about the profile of the people, and probably the most the easiest one to ask about is sales. Where the traditional sales programs and performance appraisals are essentially, you have a quota and you got to deliver, and see if there's if the team component or the getting results through others is also a factor or not.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, Josh.
Sorry, I always have something to say.
No, good.
A strategic way to ask that question, again, without getting a canned answer, is ask who the busiest person in the organization is. Because that generally leads to giving you some insight into either if everybody's overworked, where their focus is, And it could potentially point out a massive issue that you could then grab on and use later in the interview process. So, you know, and again, that'll kind of drive an uncanned answer because it'll make them think about something specific in the organization. So it's a little bit strategic. Again, another discovery question, but pulls them out of their script a little bit and can open up something you can use then later.
Well, and Josh, I'd build on that. That even gives you an understanding of why your role or the role that you're interviewing for was created in the first place. And if there's not a good answer, if they say this guy's overwhelmed, he knows that he needed help, he needed to delegate, he wasn't able to, that's a great sign, I would think. The opposite would be, no, I'm just going to keep doing it all myself, is a huge warning sign. And you're not going to get, you know, you may get hired on, but you'll get no traction and it'll be frustrating.
Yeah, depending on the position that you're interviewing for, which, you know, I assume it will be either a COO role or some sort of a leadership team type of position. I think it's just obvious that, you know, you're gonna be leading a team and or be a member of a team, and so this may be, you know, this what we have learned today or listened to today can actually help you sort of maybe reframe some of the you know, or redirect the interview process towards the area of teamwork, if that is one that you feel comfortable and you're interested in, you know, and it could be that the interviewer doesn't necessarily have all the answers, which could potentially result in you sort of, I don't want to say lecturing them, but at least showing that you have an interest and you have some experience, and that's where the anecdotes may come in. So it's something to consider. How about people smart? Anything, any thoughts that come to you guys looking at people smart? Remember, people smart are, you know, they essentially have empathy. They understand the feelings. They listen to with their heart, not only with their ears. They care about the person, about the human component. Matt, you have unmuted yourself. You want to say something?
Oh, I did that a long time ago. Sure, I'll weigh in.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll comment. So I think, you know, in my mind, at least during the interview process, this is about reading the room. It's about listening when someone asks a question, kind of listening for the intent, perhaps, of the question, as well as you're responding, trying to gauge how the other person is reacting to your response. So I think it's definitely you know, a good skill to harness in the interview process.
Super, and obviously not only applicable to teams, but in general. I agree with you. Yes, Chris.
Yeah, I was just going to add that, you know, of all the virtues, I think if you're not touching on this one in the interview process, you're missing a massive opportunity, because empathy is certainly something that we're all talking about, and part of the you know, the questions I think in terms, my food was just delivered by my 10-year-old, must be, you know, sort of around, you know, how have you navigated this period of crisis? How have you kept your company's morale up? What sort of tactics and tools are you planning for the future to continue to establish a growth mentality? So I think if you miss those questions that are really tied to the EQ part of the equation, then you're you know, certainly in this climate, you're probably out the door pretty quickly.
Yeah, EQ is which is sort of the part of the people smart virtue is it's valid. You know, it's always been valid, or I guess since it was invented, or and more so now. I agree with you, Chris. Yes, Matt. I'm sorry. I saw your window, your light come on. Anybody else? Anybody who hasn't said anything? Russell or Stephen, Kim, Meredith, Peter. Anybody else who wants to chime in?
Sure, I've worked with teams both on a peer level as well as in leading them. And a lot of times what I've found is helpful, and you mentioned it in your introduction, is using something like a DISC or some other tool to get a sense of where people are coming from so that other people on the team can understand that. It's helpful because people come from different places. And then you can adapt your relationship with that person. So, you know, and you didn't mention that in your thing, but I know you use those tools because it was, you said you're very focused on using that in your own practice.
Thank you, Russell. Yes. In fact, I have a podcast that is called the Career Accelerator. And the one concept that I stress over and over is to adopt the mindset of what's in it for them being the other person, you know, and which conflicts obviously with the typical, mindset of what's in it for me. So yes, I agree. And DISC and others, and Myers-Briggs and any other helps you understand the other person and how that person wants to be treated rather than how you like to be treated, and then let the other person sort of, hang in there and, and adapt to you. So, anybody else before we close? Great. Before we close, I'd like to ask for you guys just a very quick question. I want to run a poll and ask you to please, if you can answer that just single question. Okay, I think everybody voted. Maybe two haven't, but that's okay. And so let me share the results. Thank you so much for your kind feedback. And I have to tell you, I usually get an outlier, that just throws the fully disagree in there. Thank you for being kind with me and not throwing that one. So thank you. So with that, I leave it over now to pass it over to Laura or Bill to close.
Absolutely. Percy, thank you so much. I personally really enjoyed that, and I want to dig deeper into that book too by Pat. So thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen just super quick and just let you know what we've got planned for the next couple of, I think I shared the right one, but next week we have the 4 years of job transition, where it's being presented by George Murray, who's the author of Hired, Cut Your Career Time in Half. It's a newly released book that just came out this month. So we're looking forward to having him. I'm showing here through December 8th, but we also have things planned all through the holidays, every Tuesday into the new year. So hoping that you'll join us at all those and reach out to other people here in the group. If you have any questions or need any help, I'm here, Bill's here, and